Hey guys, I am Akanksha and I welcome you all to this video tutorial on Azure Active Directory by Intellipaat. So identity and access management is the heart of any cloud-based organization and Azure is no different. So configuring who can access and manage your Azure resources can help you keep your data safe from unauthorized access, data breaches, ransomware and other security threats. So keeping that in mind, in this video, we'll be discussing the identity and access management solution offered by Azure, that is Azure Active Directory. But before we move forward, do subscribe to Intellipaat's YouTube channel so that you never miss out on our upcoming videos. Now let's go over the agenda. So first of all, we'll see what is an Active Directory. After that, we'll see what is an Azure Active Directory. And then we'll compare Windows Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. After that, we'll see what is the service audience of this service offered by Azure. And then we'll see the various terminologies in Azure Active Directory. After that, we will perform various hands-ons where we will see how to create custom domains, users, and groups in Azure Active Directory. And then finally, we'll have a quiz to recap what all you have learned from this video. So make sure you put your answers down in the comment section below to know if you're correct. Also guys, if you want to become a certified Azure professional, then do check out Intellipaat's Azure certification training course. The link is given in the description box below. So now, without any further delays, let's get started.
Active Directory is used to store and organize information about various elements of an organization's network, such as computers, users, resources like printers, shared files, or folders. To understand this better, let's consider a scenario. Let's say that you work for an organization of about 100 people, right? So there are like total 100 employees in your organization and there are 150 computer systems. And let's say that there are 5 printers. So the organization needs to Obviously, the organization would have to keep the track of all the computer systems that are currently in use and all the computer systems that are just sitting idle and the systems that are spare, and they will have to keep a track of which employee is using which computer system or which computer system is connected to the 5 printers, right? And they will also need to keep a track of what kind of user credential to log into their computers and all of the information related to this. So that means organizations need a database where they can actually store and organize this information, right? So that database is actually called Active Directory. So usually on-premise organizations, when they store and organize this kind of information, they call it the Active Directory. So this is what Active Directory is. Since Active Directory contains all kinds of information about the organization, it contains information about users, computers, and resources that are part of the organization. It can actually be used to authenticate and authorize the users, right? Because it contains the credentials of the users, it contains the names and all other kinds of information about the user. So you can actually use the Active Directory to authenticate and authorize the user. So this is what Active Directory is all about. Now let's understand what is an Azure Active Directory. Like I've already said that Azure Active Directory is basically inspired from this on-premise Active Directory service. But it's so much more than that. Azure Active Directory is the identity management solution for Azure. It's a live directory or a database that stores user accounts and their passwords, computers, file shares, security groups, permissions, and so much more. Let's again take an example to understand this a little better. Now let's say that you again work for an organization, but this organization uses Azure Cloud for all of its workloads, right? So let's say that there are multiple departments in your organization and each and every department needs access to some different kinds of services from Azure Cloud. So again, your organization doesn't want employees to be using their own personal Azure accounts in order to be able to access Azure services. They have gone and created one parent account, Azure account, so that all of their employees can use that one single account to access and use Azure services.
Quick info guys, if you want to become a certified Azure professional, then do check out Intellipaat's Azure certification training course. The link is given in the description box below. Now let's continue with the session.
Now, like I've already said that different departments may need access to different kinds of services. That means let's say that the production environment doesn't need access to any machine learning services, let's say. So if you give out the credential for the whole parent account, then they will actually have the access to those services as well, right? Along with the services that they actually need. So this is not very a smart decision when it comes to the security terms, right? Because if everyone has access to every service that comes in your Azure subscription, then how would you know that who is using what service, right? So to keep a track of that, what you can do, you can easily create users and you can give them their own passwords and own user accounts, so that, and then you can go ahead and give them a role so that they can only access the services that they actually need. That way you will know that production department is only accessing virtual machines and databases and cloud function and these kind of services, and other departments are only accessing the services that they actually need. This way your Azure subscription or your Azure organization's Azure account will stay safe, right? Because there won't be any unauthorized access, and you can also keep a track of all of the billing, right? So till here everything seems fine, but now if you think about the number of employees, how would that work? I mean, there are going to be so many employees. There are going to be more than 100 employees with their own user accounts and their own passwords to access some specific service, and then if they want access to some other service, then they will have to be given another user account and another pair of passwords so that they can access that other service as well. So there are going to be multiple usernames and multiple passwords for all of the employees. Now, to keep a track of all of those things, of course, your organization's IT admin would need Active Directory. Now, instead of just using an on-premise Active Directory, he can directly go ahead and use Azure Active Directory because Azure offers this service, right? So IT admin will go ahead and store all kinds of information about user accounts, their passwords, the computers, file shares, security groups, permissions that they have given to every user account, and so much more in that Azure Active Directory. Now again, like I said, that Azure Active Directory is an identity management solution, right? That means now since it contains so much information about users, we can actually go ahead and use Azure Active Directory for identity management purpose. Now that we understand what is an Azure Active Directory in layman terms, let's see how Azure defines Azure Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's multi-tenant identity solution for Azure. Azure AD is one-stop solution for core directory services for cloud, application access management, and identity authentication solutions. That means, like I said, that it is inspired from the on-premise directory services. That means that for cloud, it is one-stop solution for core directory services, right? And for application access management, well, of course, like I said, that it's an identity management solution. That means you can actually use Azure Active Directory to configure who can access your application and not. And then, of course, identity authentication solutions, like I've already told you, Azure Active Directory is the solution offered by Azure for identity authentications, right? Now, moving on, why exactly Azure Active Directory came into the picture? Like, what was the need that Azure felt so that it provided this service, right? Let's first consider the scenario before Azure Active Directory. That means the case scenario where Azure Active Directory does not exist. So for any service that you might want to use, you are given a set of username and password, using which you can access that particular service for which the username and password is created. Now let's say that you as an employee of your organization wanted to use database services offered by Azure. So IT admin goes and creates a username and password for you, and now you can use your organization's parent or tenant account, Azure account, to access database service. But you can only access database service using this username and password. Now let's say if you wanted a cloud function service, right? You wanted to access the cloud function service. So for that, again, IT admin had to create one more username and password for you, and now you can use this particular username and password to access Cloud Function.
Quick info guys, if you want to become a certified Azure professional, then do check out Intellipaat's Azure certification training course. The link is given in the description box below. Now, let's continue with the session.
You cannot use the previous set of username password to access Cloud Function because that username and password is specifically created for database service, right? Now, let's say that you want one more service, you want to access Azure Virtual Machines. Now, for that also, IT admin had to go and create one more username and password, and then now you can access Azure Virtual Machine using this particular username and password. That means if you want to access 3 different services from Azure, then you will be given 3 different sets of username and password. Now, of course, it's a hassle for you to remember all these different username and passwords, but it's not just you. It's also a very big problem for the IT admin of your organization, because of course he has to manage all of the passwords, all of the usernames, because he needs to keep a track of what username he has already created or what password he has already given to what username, and what a set of username and password goes to which employee, and what are the permissions connected or related to that set of username and password. So he has to keep track of all of this. So of course, if one employee needs access to 3 services and there are 3 different sets of username and passwords, of course there are going to be so many other employees as well, and they are also going to have multiple username and passwords, because of course they are going to need to access multiple services, right? So this all of this becomes hassle for employees as well as the IT admin, who has to keep track of or who has to manage all of these username and passwords. So this is where Azure Active Directory comes in. Now that we have seen what was the case scenario before Azure Active Directory, now let's move ahead and see how, when Azure offered its service, identity management service, Azure Active Directory, all of these problems got solved, right? So after Azure Active Directory was introduced in your organization, Azure Active Directory, your organization can actually use Azure Active Directory to just create a single set of username and password, using which an employee of your organization or you can access any service that you want, as long as the admin has given you the permission. Which means that now, instead of creating multiple sets of username and password for all of your different services, now IT admin just has to create one username and password that belongs to you, and the IT admin can actually go ahead and add permissions in that same username and password for different services. That means, let's say that first of all you want a database service and your password and username was created, right? Now when you wanted Cloud Function service, then instead of creating a new username and password, your IT admin just has to add the permission for Cloud Function service in your existing username and password. That is all he has to do. So that means there will only be a single username and password for every single employee, right? He just has to keep track of all the username and password for every single employee, and now he can use Active Directory to track or store or organize the permissions that he has given to all of the username and passwords. So now your task has become simple, because you only have to remember one set of username and password, as well as your IT admin's task has become simple, because he doesn't have to track all of the different username and password that belong to only one employee, right? Because now there is only one username and password for one employee. So this feature is actually called a single sign-on. That means a single set of username and password to sign in and access any service that you want, as long as you're given the permission, right? So Azure Active Directory provides this feature, which is called single sign-on. So as we all know that Microsoft isn't just providing or offering web-based services through its cloud platform, that is Azure, but it has been actually also providing on-premise services as well. So before Microsoft provided Azure Active Directory, it had already provided an on-premise Active Directory service, which was known as Windows Active Directory. So Windows Active Directory was not actually designed to handle web-based services or information related to web-based services, right? So that was one major drawback which led Microsoft to come up with this another Active Directory service, which is called Azure Active Directory now, for all the users that were now using cloud platform, right? So even though Windows Active Directory and Azure Active Directory come from the same root, that is Microsoft, they still have many significant differences. One of the very obvious difference is that obviously Windows Active Directory, like I've already told you, was designed for on-premise purpose, while Azure Active Directory was designed for cloud, right? So it is basically cloud located. So apart from this major difference, there are many other differences which we will see in this Windows AD versus Azure AD topic.
Quick info guys, if you want to become a certified Azure professional, then do check out Intellipaat's Azure certification training course. The link is given in the description box below. Now let's continue with the session.
But before that, let us just see what is Windows AD in official definition terms, right? So Windows Active Directory is a Windows operating system directory service that offers a single interface for organizing, and maintaining information about the organization's network. Now, I've already told you one major drawback because of which Microsoft had to come up with this another Active Directory service, but there is so much more than that. To learn how Windows Active Directory works differently or how Azure Active Directory works differently from Windows Active Directory, we will first have to see how Windows Active Directory works, right? So basically, Windows Active Directory works on different layers, each layer to perform different tasks. So as you can see on your screen, I have listed 5 layers. So the first layer is called ADDS, which is acronym for Windows Active Directory Domain Service. And then next we have ADLS, which stands for Azure Data Lake Storage Services. And then third layer is ADFC, which is Active Directory Federation Services. And then fourth layer is ADCS, which is Active Directory and Certification Services. And then finally we have the fifth layer, which is ADRMS, which stands for Active Directory Rights Management Services. So like I said, all of these different layers perform different kinds of tasks, right? So let's discuss all of these different tasks one by one, starting with ADDS. So ADDS, like I've already told you, stands for Windows Active Directory Domain Services, right? So this layer actually allows admin to manage information related to user logins and other information such as when the user signed up or logged in, or when did he log out, and how much of services are they using, and stuff like that. And the next layer we have ADLS, which stands for Azure Data Lake Storage Service. This layer lets admin store any amount of data and data of any type and any size, right? And the next layer ADFC provides the single sign-on feature, which lets user access systems and applications with a single password and username. Now, like I've already told you about little bit about single sign-on feature, right? So since this is the Windows Active Directory, which means that it's working on the on-premise work locations, that means that this layer provides single sign-on feature using which users will be able to access systems or application, not the web-based services, right, with a single password or credential. So this is what ADFC is for. And then the next layer that we have, that is ADCS. This layer allows admin to customize services and manage or issue public certificates. And then the last layer that we have is ADRMS, which is basically used for data protection. So when we use Windows Active Directory, the admin will have to take care of 5 different layers that perform different tasks. Now that is also very big of a hassle. So this was one of the other drawbacks which led Microsoft to come up with this Azure Active Directory, another Active Directory solution, which is Azure Active Directory, right? So when Azure Active Directory came into the picture, what happened was Azure Active Directory actually merged all these layers into just 2 layers, and these 2 layers performed all of the tasks that were all previous 5 layers were doing. So these 2 layers were WAAD, that is Windows Azure Active Directory, and then the second layer was WAAC, that is Windows Azure Access Control Service. So WAAD layer combines all the 5 layers of Windows Active Directory. That means that it does all the tasks that were previously done by 5 different layers in Windows Active Directory. So, and it is the ultimate identification management layer. And the second layer, that is WAAC, enables federation for all of the services of an organization. Now since it's Azure Active Directory, that means we are using single sign-on to access different Azure services, right? So for that, WAAC layer was introduced in Active Directory, in Azure Active Directory. So these are the 2 layers. So this is how Azure Active Directory is much evolved and better version of Windows Active Directory, as it has combined all of the 5 layers into just 2 layers, and it has performed all of the tasks that were previously done by 5 different layers, and it also lets users access web-based services using single sign-on, right? So this is how Azure Active Directory is different from Windows Active Directory. Now let's see what is service audience, that means who is using this service offered by Azure. So there's basically 3 kinds of audience when it comes to Azure Active Directory. First is IT administrator, second is application developer, and then we have online customers. So IT admins basically ensure that every employee has relevant credential to access Azure services with relevant permissions. So they basically take care of all the sign-in procedure, and they also resolve issues related to authentication. Now coming to application developers, well, they are the ones who want to use the services for which they have been given the permission, right? So with Azure Active Directory in the picture, application developer only have to remember one set of username and password to access any service that they want to use for their application development purpose, right? And also with Azure Active Directory, the services are made easily available, so their development becomes significantly hassle-free. Now the next service audience that we have here is online customers. So online customers can access services such as Office 365 and other CRM services offered by Azure with their Azure Active Directory credentials. So these are the three major service audience of Azure Active Directory service, right? Now moving on, we will learn about the terminologies in Azure Active Directory. Well, of course, in order to be able to understand Azure Active Directory in depth, you must first get familiar with the major terminology that you will most likely come across when you're dealing with Azure Active Directory, right? So that is why we are going to cover the terminology section first. Okay, so in terminologies, we have tenants, domains, user, and groups. So first of all, let's discuss tenants. Now you must have come across this term a lot. You must have heard tenant term in context of tenant accounts, or that Microsoft is a multi-tenant cloud platform or something like that, right? So what does it actually mean? Well, as for tenant, you can think of it as an organization. Now there are a lot of organizations that are using Microsoft Azure cloud platform, right? They're using their services, and so all of these organizations can be referred to as separate tenants to which Microsoft Azure has been providing or offering their cloud services. So what Microsoft Azure does, it makes sure that all of these tenants stay isolated and separated so that they can maintain the services that they are separately providing to all of these organizations. So basically, when people use the term tenant account, they are usually referring to the parent Azure account that an organization has created, using which they are making use of Azure resources and Azure services, right? So that is what tenant is in Active Directory. Now moving on, next terminology that we have here is domains. So what is a domain? A domain is a DNS zone for which the tenant has proven ownership, which means that it's the public domain of the organization, or maybe a subdomain of the organization, or even an alternative domain that the organization isn't using publicly but has ownership for it, which means that no one else can use this particular domain but the organization itself, because it is the lone owner of that domain, right? So in most cases, organizations use this domain for their own websites or applications, so that the user base of those organizations can access their websites or applications using these domains. When you create an Azure Active Directory, you get a default domain with your Azure Active Directory. It's usually in the format as shown on your screen, that is onmicrosoft.com. The prefix of this domain depends on the name of the Azure Active Directory. That means the organization gets to decide what would be the prefix of this domain. And this domain, that including that prefix, this domain becomes their unique domain for which the tenant or the organization has the lone ownership, right? Now, you might be thinking, like I said, that in most cases, organizations use this domain for their own websites and applications, right? Now, if they used this default domain that they're getting with their Azure Active Directory, which has the suffix of onmicrosoft.com, then their user base might think that this URL might take them to some Microsoft page, right? Because it has microsoft.com in the end. But that doesn't happen, because in most cases what happens is that the organizations or the tenant usually add their custom domains in Azure Active Directory, and then they verify that custom domain. That means they prove their ownership for that custom domain, and then they use that custom domain for any of their personal purposes, right? But how do they add their custom domain in the Azure Active Directory? So let's understand that. Let's add a custom domain in our Azure Active Directory using our Azure portal, right? So for that, I'll go to my Azure portal. So this is my Azure portal, And basically this is the homepage of my Azure portal. So before we begin adding a custom domain name in our Azure Active Directory, let me first tell you how you can get a custom domain name. It has to be a valid domain name. That is the only way it will work. Now, for a valid domain name, since it's just a demo, you don't have to go and buy or purchase a valid domain name. You can use one of the websites, online websites that provide you free domain names for a certain period of time, right? So I'm going to be using one such website for this demo, which is called freenom.com, right? So this is what I'm going to use. I will pick domain name from here, a free domain name, and then I will add that custom domain name in my Azure directory, Azure Active Directory here. So first of all, let's go ahead and select a custom domain name. All right, so this is how freenom.com looks. I have already created an account and logged in. All you have to do is create an account and then sign in, and then this page will open up for you. Now what you have to do is you have to go to service and you have to register a new domain, right? Now what you have to do is you have to search for a domain name of your choice. So I'll search for any domain name that will start with Hello Cloud. Alright, so here's the result of my search. As you can see, hello.tk is here, hellocloud.ml is here, hellocloud.ga is here, and all of them are free. We also have some other domain names, hellocloud.com, which is not actually free. So we are going to be using a free domain name for today's demo, right? So I will select this hellocloud.ga domain name, right? So to get this domain name, I just have to click on this button here that says get it now. Alright, once I do it, I'll go to my checkout. Don't worry, you won't be charged if you go to checkout because this is a free domain name, so you won't be charged anything, right? And I'm getting this free domain name for 3 months. Alright, so I'll click on continue. Alright, and then final step, I just have to check mark this and then click on this complete order button, and then this domain will be given to me and I can use it however I wish for the next 3 months, right? So I will go to my client area. Alright, so now that I have a domain, let me show you guys where it is. The domains that you have purchased or the domains that you have got for free from this freenom.com, you can find them here in my domains section. Alright, so the domain that I just bought from them for free was hellocloud.ga. Now let's go ahead and add this domain name in my Azure directory, Azure Active Directory, right? So in my Azure portal, what I will have to do is I have to search for Azure Active Directory, right? Alright, so this is my Azure Active Directory, and like I told you that you will get a custom domain name with every time you create an Azure Active Directory. So with every account you get one Azure Active Directory already created for you, right? And this is my Azure Active Directory, default directory, which is a default directory, right? And for this default directory, I already have a default domain name as well. Let me show you how you can find that. In this search bar here, you just have to type custom domain, and custom domain names is the option that you have to select. Alright, so now as you can see that there is already a domain name here with the suffix of on Microsoft.com. So this is the default domain name that I got with my default Azure Active Directory, right? But now we want to add a custom domain name, and we have already bought a free domain name, and now we can start adding that custom domain name. Now to add a custom domain name, we just have to click on this button right here. So I'll click on it, and here we have to provide the custom domain name, which is in our case is hellocloud.ga, right? Alright, GA. So this is the custom domain name that we want to use. Let's again make sure it's right. hellocloud.ga, hellocloud.ga, right? So now I'll go ahead and click on this add button here. Alright, so now it says that to use hellocloud.ga with your Azure AD, create a new TXT record with your domain name registrar using the info below. So we have to create a TXT record in our domain registrar, which is for us is Freenom. Alright, so now what you have to do is you have to navigate to your Freenom, and you have to click on this manage domain button in front of the domain that you want to use. So for us it's hellocloud.ga. So I'll click here. Alright, from here you have to click on Manage Freenom DNS. Alright, so now here we will create a record using the information given to us by Microsoft Azure, right? So what you have to do is, first of all, you have to change the type to TXT because that is the kind of record that we are trying to create here. So I'll select TXT here. Alright, so next thing we have to do is we have to copy this destination field and then we have to paste the value here in the target field. Alright, and for TTL it's already same, so we don't have to do anything, and we have to keep the name field here blank, right? Now I'll just click on Save Changes. Alright, so it says my record added successfully. So I'll go back to my Azure portal. Now I can go ahead and click on this Verify button. But before that, let me tell you that verifying a domain name could take up to 72 hours. That means once you have bought or purchased custom domain name, and that once you have added that custom domain name here in Azure Active Directory, and even when you have created a record successfully, if you go ahead and try to verify it right at that second, it might not happen for you at that moment because it usually takes up to 72 hours. So if an error comes up, then you don't have to worry about that because it will eventually get verified. You can just come up again and you can try it in another 10 or 15 minutes. It'll happen for you eventually. But for the first time when you try to verify it, it might give you an error saying that it can take up to 72 hours for registering or verifying the domain name that you're trying to create, right? So let me show you what this error is actually that I'm talking about, right? So if I click on verify right now, it's going to give me an error like I've already said. So let's see. Alright, so it says that it could not find DNS record for this domain because DNS changes may take up to 72 hours to propagate. That means that the changes that I've made, that the record that I've successfully added here may take up to 72 hours to actually get acknowledged, right? So we are going to wait for a few more minutes and then we're going to try again to verify it. It's going to get verified after some time. Let me tell you, once you have added this custom domain name, even if it's not verified, it's going to show in your custom domain names page. It's going to be shown like this. The status is going to be specified as unverified. So it's only going to get verified after some time. So when you are adding a custom domain name, once you have added your custom domain name, you can just leave it like that. You can just leave it for an hour or two. And then you can come back to it and then just click on it and then click on verify. So we will do it after some time. Alright guys, so now let's try to verify this added custom domain name, right? So I'm going to, like I've already told you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it and I'm going to click on verify. So since I have already created a TXT record and I have already saved it, it shouldn't give me any problem now because I have waited for a few hours. And before, when I tried to verify it, as soon as I created this record, it gave me an error saying that it could take up to 72 hours for a created record to propagate, right? So now that I have waited for some time, it shouldn't give me that error anymore and it should get verified easily. So for that, I'm going to click on this button and let's see what happens. Alright, so like I told you, it should get verified easily and it has. It says that verification has succeeded. And now if I go back to my custom domain names page, you can see that now the status here is not saying unverified, it says verified. That means custom domain that I wanted to add here in my Active Directory, my default Active Directory, has been added and it has been verified as well. Now I can go ahead and start using this custom domain name that I have added. Alright guys, so this is how you can create and add a custom domain name in your directory, in your Azure Active Directory. Now let's go on and move ahead with our further topics in this module. Alright guys, so the next terminology that you're most likely to come across when you're dealing with Azure Active Directory is a user. So by now I know you already understand the meaning of a user, right? And we have also used this terminology before in this module only when we were understanding what is an Azure Active Directory. But let's just once go through the definition. So users are the individuals that are given permission and set of username and a password to access and use certain services, right? So you definitely understand what is a user, but what you don't know is how to create a user in Azure Active Directory. how to create or how to add a user. So moving on, let's understand that. Let's add or delete users using Azure Active Directory. Now for that, I'll have to move to my portal, right? So let me do that. Alright guys, so now I'm in my portal and I have to add a user in my Azure Active Directory. To do that, I will first have to navigate to my Azure Active Directory, right? So I'll do that using this search bar over here. I'll just search for Azure Active Directory and here it is. So this is my default Active Directory. Now I have to add a user in my Active Directory, right? So for that, I'll select this users option right here. Alright, so as you can see that there are already some users that I've added in my Azure Active Directory. You can see their names over here. So that means that whenever you create a user, they will all be listed down here for you to navigate or explore from, right? So let's go ahead now and create our own user. Now, as you can see that there are two options right here. First is new user and the second option is new guest user. So let me tell you a brief difference between these two options. The functionality is basically same. You're basically adding a user in your Azure Active Directory and you will be eventually giving them some roles so that they can access your Azure services, but within some specified permissions or access controls, right? But eventually you'll be doing that for both of these. So let's say that you work for an organization and you have been asked to add some users within your organization so that you can provide them access to their relevant service, right? So for that, you will use this new user option. So basically this option is used whenever you want to create a user that is considered as the internal part of your organization, right? And as for this guest user option, you use this option, let's say, when your organization wants to collaborate with some external partners so that they can give them access to some of their resources, right? That is when you use this new guest user option. So apart from the fact that this new user option is only has to be used when the user is your internal member of the organization, and this new guest user option has to be used when your organization wants to give access to some external party that is not a part of the organization, but that external party needs access to the organization services. There's not much difference between these two because eventually they will be given a username and a password and they will be signing in, and then they will be given some roles according to which they will be accessing your services. So all of these procedure remains same. The only fact that differs is that the new user will have a user type that says member here, and for new guest user, the user type will be guest. It's just a very neat way of organizing all the users that you have created so that you instantly know which user is the part of the internal organization and which user is the external party as soon as you have a look at this list of users, right? It's just a neat way. It's just a way of keeping everything neat as Azure likes it, right? So also there is one more difference, which is since the new user, when you use this new user option, the user is expected to be a part of your organization, right? That means that when you create this new user, the username that you will use should have a domain name that is verified with the directory in which you're trying to create the user, right? As for guest user, because they are guests, they are external partners, they are not a part of your organization. That means they can have their own domain, and that domain does not have to be verified in the directory where you are trying to create a user, right? Because all the domains that you will verify in your directory will belong to that organization only, and the external partners, they might not have that domain because that domain is not of their ownership, right? So that is why the domain name that you can use in the username of guest user does not have to be verified in the default directory where you're trying to add this guest user. So let's start by creating a guest user first. So for that, I'll obviously click on this new guest user button. Alright, so now this create user will give me an option to create a user which is a part of my organization, but right now I don't want to create a user. I want to invite a user. That means I want to invite a guest from some external party so that I can provide him access to my services, right? So I will use this option only. Alright, now I have to provide a name to my guest user. So let's say the name of my guest user is Shikha Thakur, right? and the email address. Now this is what I was talking about. Let's say that the email address is, now this email address is not verified in my default directory, so but still I am able to use this email address because right now I'm not actually creating a user, I'm just inviting a user, right? So I have provided the name, I have provided the email address, the rest of the things are not mandatory, so I'll leave that out. And yes, so that's all I have to do right now. For now the role will be user, and there are also options for me to decide whether I want to block sign in for them and other things. I don't want to do that. Now I'm just going to click on invite, and as you can see, inviting user, and here you go, my user has been invited. That means the invitation has gone through, and now that user can decide whether they want to accept the invitation or not. As you can see, the user type of the user that I just invited says guest. That means it's a guest user and not an internal member of my organization, which would have the user type of member. So now that you know how to create a guest user, let's go ahead and actually create a user using this new user option. All right. So for this also, I'm again going to click on this add button, and now out of these two options, I'm going to choose this option here that says create user. All right. So now I have to provide, first of all, I have to provide a username. Like I said, the username should have the domain name that is verified in my default directory. So the first domain name option that I get here is obviously the default domain name that I get with my Active Directory, right? Because since this is the default domain name, that means that it has already been verified by my directory. So it's there, and I will also get option for any other domain name that I might have gone ahead and added myself. That means the custom domain name. If I have verified any custom domain name in my directory, then I can choose that domain here as well, right? So let me show you. The domain name that we had, the custom domain name that we have previously added in my directory should show here if I click on this drop down option here. Alright, so here it is. As you can see, hellocloud.ga, the custom domain name that I had added is also here. Since it has been verified in my Azure account, I get the option of using this domain name as well. So let's do one thing. Let's first give a name in the username, right? So that name would be, let's say, Jordan. Alright, now as for the domain that I want to use, I will use the custom domain name that I had just verified and added in my directory, right? So this is the domain name. Now I can provide the name. So for name, again, I'll go ahead with Jordan. Right, so the rest of the things again are not mandatory, so I'm just going to leave. I can block the person, or I can give job info. I can provide the title here. I can give the department if I want to, so that everything stays organized for me, so that I know this user belongs to this department, right? So for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and skip that part, and now we can just go ahead and click on create. Right, so as you can see that the user that we have just created is added. The name of the user is Jordan, and the user type is member, and the username of that username says hello.cloud. hellocloud.ga, right? So this is the custom domain name that I had added and verified in my Active Directory. Also, one more thing that I would like to point out is this is the username for the user, right? So where is the password? Let me tell you. So when you are creating a user, let's say that we are again in this create user page, right? So if I give a name here, let's say Sarah, and the name would be Sarah, and domain name, I'm going to keep the default domain here. Now as you can see that there is a password option here. If I click on this show password, then it will show me the password. So just copy this password and keep it somewhere safe, because when you are giving the credentials to that particular user, you will have to give this username and this password to that user, so that for the first time it can log in using this credentials, right? So this is where you can get the password. So just copy it and keep it somewhere safe, and then you can go ahead and create the user. So for Sarah, I have the username, I have the password that I had copied, and I'll go to Sarah and I'll give her these credentials so that she can access the resources using, or she can log in using the credentials that I have created, right? Alright, so this is how you can create a user, or you can invite a user in your Azure Active Directory so that you can provide them access to some of your services from the subscription, right? So this is how you create a user. But how about deleting a user? Well, that's easy. There is a delete user option here. You just have to select the user, select any user that you want, and then you can just click on this delete user button and then just click on yes. Alright, so as you can see, I have received a notification saying that the user Sarah has been successfully deleted. So this is how you can delete users. Now let's move on and understand our last terminology, that is groups, right? So what are groups? Well, when we talk about groups in Azure Active Directory, so as you can already imagine or guess from the name itself, a group is a logical collection of users, right? So groups in Azure Active Directory are different than the resource groups because they are the logical collection of resources, while these groups are logical collections of users, right? So groups are created to organize the users or devices on the basis of geographic location, department, types of services, or hardware characteristics. For example, let's say that you are an IT admin in your organization and you have a department where the employees usually need access to same services, right? So now what you can do is you can create them users and then you can give them access, or you can create them user and then you can put them in a group and then giving access to separate users one by one. What you can do is you can just give access to the whole group, and that same access or same permissions will be inherited by any member that is added in the group. That means the users of the group, right? So that is how groups work. Now let's see how we can actually go ahead and create groups and add members using Azure Active Directory, right? So again, for that I'll have to move to my portal. So the first option that I get here is the group type. So you can select group type on the basis of what is convenient for you. I'm just going to keep the default value here. The next is group name. Now we have to provide a name to our group. Now remember that the name of your group should be relevant because it should be easy for you to understand or to remember what that group involves or what kind of services are involved with that group as soon as you look at the name. So remember to keep the name of the group relevant, right? So I'm going to name my group as development here, right? Alright, so the next option that we have is group description. Is not mandatory, but you can add a description for the group. You can add what kind of services are involved in that group or how many members are there in the group and things like that. So it basically gives us a neat organized way of having a track on the group, right? And the next option that we have here is membership type. So in this membership type you basically get three options: assigned, dynamic user, and dynamic device. So you basically use this assigned membership type whenever you want to create a very basic group and add some members in it. You can add those members in this group manually and you can remove those members manually, right? And the next option that we have here is dynamic user, which actually lets you define some rules for this group on the basis of which new users can be added automatically or existing users can be removed automatically. That means you won't have to do anything manually. The users that meet the requirement of the rules that are set by you for this group will be added automatically to this group, and the users that don't meet requirement of the rules that have been set by you for this group will be removed automatically from this group if you use this dynamic user option, right? And the next option that we have here is dynamic device. Now this option is similar to the previous option. The only difference is that it automatically adds or removes a device in a group instead of a user. So for this demo we will use assigned only. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is add a member in our group, right? So for that I'll click here, and out of all of these entities you can select the members that you want. So we had created a user named Jordan, right? So I'll go ahead and select Jordan and add Jordan as a member in my group, right? Alright, I'll go ahead and select one more user here. I already had a user named Amrit. So Amrit, I'm going to add Amrit also in my group, right? Alright, so now I have two members. I'll just go ahead and click on select and then I will click on create. Alright, so as you can see, I have received the notification saying that the group has been created successfully. That means my group is here and available for me to use. As you can see that the membership type is assigned and this group type is security and the name of the group is development. If I go inside that group, I will be able to see that there are two members in my group that are users actually, right? And if you want to delete this group, you can just go ahead and click on this delete option here. The group will be deleted easily. So this is how you create a group and add members in it in Azure Active Directory. Alright guys, so now it's time for a quiz. So my question for you guys is, what is Azure Active Directory? Your options are networking service offered by Azure, data warehouse service offered by Azure, identity and access management service offered by Azure, or is it another term for Azure subscription? If you guys know the answer to this question, then do leave a comment in the comment section below to know if you're correct.
Quick info guys, if you want to become a certified Azure professional, then do check out Intellipaat's Azure certification training course. The link is given in the description box below. So guys, this brings us to the end of this session. I hope you found this video informative. If you have any queries, then do leave a comment. We would love to help you out. Thank you for watching.